Good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda Tan, Associate Director for Research Development at the MSCC, and I'm joined today by my colleague Pavan Nara, our AI Technical Specialist. So today's session is really not about Python, and it's not about notebooks. It's about a question that we've been hearing from researchers, faculty, administrators, and everyone that's at an institution of higher education all the time. If I can upload my data to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and get an answer in 10 seconds, why would I ever need to use anything else? So today we're going to answer this question exactly. We're going to walk through four different approaches to working with AI and data. We'll start by introducing an overarching research question, a realistic problem that researchers and faculty members face all the time. Then we'll look at four ways to approach that problem. So first, we're going to use an AI assistant. Everyone on this call is probably familiar with an AI assistant. And then we're going to talk about using notebooks without AI. What does that mean? And then we'll use notebooks with an AI API. And finally, we'll talk about using open source models in notebooks. We'll finish this webinar by talking about skills and where you can go next. So next slide, please. So this is the fundamental gist of the webinar today. Most of us don't collect data for fun. We all have data that's sitting on a computer that's under our desk. We have data on the cloud. We collect data because we're trying to answer real questions, realistic questions, and ultimately use that data to make decisions. So the workflow that we're going to talk about today is fairly simple, and it should resonate with most of you on the call. We have a data set and we have a series of questions, and we want answers so that we can take action. The challenge is that moving from raw data that you collect to reliable decisions are often that pathway is really messy. And while it looks very simple on paper, right here on the slide, it looks simple. The reality is that that process is often messy. AI can absolutely help, but the question becomes, how do we do this in a way that's repeatable, trustworthy, and reproducible? Next slide, please. So this is a very familiar situation with most of us on the call. Um, let's imagine that your institution has conducted an AI readiness survey. You've sent this out, right? You've worked with your central IT, you've worked with faculty members, and you've sent out this survey to all the people on your campus. And you've received 1,000 responses from faculty, researchers, students, administrators, right? And so in this data set, in this survey, you've collected information about the different roles. You've collected information about the AI comfort and interests of these people. You've also collected the concerns that your faculty or researchers or students have about AI. And finally, you have some open-ended comments. Now, you have 1,000 survey responses. Um, it is not possible for Google Forms to actually synthesize this data. So now what? People usually upload the CSV. This survey data, you can upload a CSV or you can upload an Excel spreadsheet right into ChatGPT, and you can start asking questions. And honestly, sometimes that's perfectly reasonable. You can get an answer within literally less than 5 minutes. Next slide, please. But this is the real problem. This is where we, Pavan and myself, would like you to shift the thinking. We do not actually care about the CSV. We don't care about the data itself. No one wakes up excited and says, I'm going to go through this entire CSV. I'm going to look through this entire spreadsheet and build all these tables, pivot tables, right? What we care about is really the answer to the questions that we have. So, for example, in this problem that we have, that we've sent out this survey, right, and we've collected 1,000 responses, um, we care about which groups are the least comfortable with AI. Who on your campus is not comfortable with AI? What concerns appear repeatedly? What are faculty members worried about? What are students worried about? And then what support can the institution give to faculty, researchers, students, and what should they prioritize? And finally, how can this be a longitudinal survey? How can we keep collecting data year after year so that we can make some meaningful decisions? So, the real problem is moving from data to decisions. The data is simply the vehicle that helps us answer those questions. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the central question for today. If I can upload that CSV file into ChatGPT or Claude, why would I ever need to use something like a notebook? Now, the core premise also of this webinar is that you have a fundamental understanding of a notebook. You will be walking through some hands-on activities using notebooks. So there's an assumption that you understand what a notebook is. So if you can upload a CSV into ChatGPT, why would you ever need to use a notebook? And that's not a rhetorical question. That is a fair question. And the answer is that notebooks aren't always better. The answer is that different tools are useful in different situations. So today we're going to explore four approaches, understand the trade-offs, and talk about when each one makes sense and why you should be using each one and having each one of those in your toolbox. So next slide, please. So Pavan's going to walk us through these four approaches. And I suspect most people in this room is already here. You've uploaded a document, you ask a question, and you get an answer. So we'll let Pavan walk you through the four approaches, and I will rejoin later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for the great introduction and a great platform for the hands-on session. So, as Amanda has described, we always face this problem. Now, we have datasets, we have documents, and this is an approach we already know. We describe the problem to the AI assistant, and we do provide some data, some documents to support it. At the same time, AI does give you a good response. It is actually great, it is fast, and it is useful to be in fact. But the issue is not whether AI can produce a response or can it provide a structured response. The issue is that can we repeat the same process again, later with the same structure, with the same logic, or with the same, format of reusable output. Can we do that? In order to do that, there are a couple of challenges that we face. One is prompts are not usually versioned because you cannot track how prompts are being considered, and outputs are always not logged. So the model may change. The interface of the AI assistant, be it ChatGPT, be it Claude, they might add new features. They might remove the model or bring a new version of model. We are getting new models once a month. So, the reproducibility here depends on a system that you cannot control at all. So, what is the problem here? So, this is where workflows actually becomes important. So, a workflow is where we define what we provide, what we ask, what are the boundaries that AI should follow, and what format are we expecting from AI. So here the point is not to criticize chat interfaces or AI assistants, but the point is to see where AI assistants can be beneficial and where repeatability can be, harder. So as we already know how we can use AI assistants and how we can use chat interfaces, um, I'm not gonna demo how to write a prompt and that. Now let's go ahead and we will look in a repo. In order to do that, I will paste the link of the repo into the chat. And using that link, you can see the repo where we have already created 3 different notebooks. I will describe one notebook at a time. So yes. Yeah. So that is approach one. So approach two is about using notebooks. So, as I said before, um, previously we used to use AI assistants and you know all the chat interfaces that we have. So now we are going into notebooks. So before we bring AI into workflows, uh, first is that as we are using notebooks, this may feel like a step backward as we are going, without AI. But to be saying that it is actually the foundation. Before we add AI to any analysis, to you know, any notebooks that we use, we need to show that the analysis itself can be transparent, can be repeatable without AI. So in notebook one, we'll define the question, we'll load the data, we'll analyze the structure, and we'll use regular analytics to create summaries, tables, and exporting the content. So we can see what the data was loaded and etc. There are a couple of limitations as well. The first most limitation is that regular code is less flexible and we need to interpret how unstructured text can be. And this is where AI becomes useful. So in order to go ahead, I want everyone to go on to the repo, which is on the chat, which is in our MSCC public repo. So in that, there are three different notebooks. I'm going to increase my font so that everybody can see. So, so I've pasted the link into the chat. Uh, just let me know if everybody is on the repo. Give us a thumbs up, a thumbs down, so that if you have any other. Um, oh, sorry.
Hi, Dr. Abibi. You're allowed to speak now. Um, for those on the call who would like
Um,
to.
Thank you. I previously I didn't see the chat, but now the disabled is out and I see the link. Thank you.
Yes.
Yolanda, do you have a question?
Sorry, that was an error.
Okay.
So, is everybody on the repo? So are we good to go? Let's just stay
Do you
community.
mean if we see it on the if we open the link? Yes, we opened
Yes.
the link and yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So as you see on the screen, there are three different notebooks in the repo, and we already described how this repo is going to work. So in this, in this webinar, we are going to look at three different approaches. One is without AI, one is using an API key, and one is using a Hugging Face model. And we'll also discuss the trade-offs between each of these different approaches and how that converts into the final output, which is understanding how you can go from data to questions using different approaches as well. So before going into the notebooks, I want every one of you to be an AI specialist here. Now you have your data sets. Now in each of the data set, you have 1,000 participants and their interests, their concerns, and their free text feedback. Now, you as an AI specialist here, you as a researcher, you as a participant, you are going to suggest what is the support that you are going to provide for that specific participant in these three different approaches. So the first approach is going to be without AI, as we have defined before. So I want everyone to go to the notebook without AI, as you can see on the screen. So go to the specific notebook called Notebook Without AI, and once you click onto the binder link on screen, open in Colab, it will redirect you to a Google Colab website. So this is where we are going to demo the current notebook. Let me know if anyone is having issues with that. So this is the notebook that we are going to work on. Let's just take a couple seconds so that everyone can come here. Okay. Mhm. Hey, so I hope everyone is in the right notebook. So before we bring AI into the workflow here, I want to start with a plain notebook. So that's why we are going with without AI approach. So the reason is simple, that if we cannot make the analysis repeatable and reproducible without AI, adding AI will only make it more harder to trust and harder to understand. So while we are going through this demo, I don't want you to focus on the numbers and the outputs. The numbers are only for this specific output and the specific variables that we are going to use. The real lesson and the real output that I want you to focus is the structure, how we are loading the data set, how we are inspecting it, how are we getting answers to our responses without AI. And then we'll look into how API can be used, how a Hugging Face model can be used as well. So the first block, as you can see on screen, is where we import the basic tools that we need. So the role of this block is to set up an environment so that the notebook can run on top of it. The input is the survey data, and the output is that we have a Python environment ready. So when we use chat interfaces such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, the environment is mostly hidden from us. We usually give out a prompt and we get a solution. Whereas in a notebook, the setup is visible and you can, that is a part of the reproducibility factor that we discussed. So go ahead and run the first couple cells. So when you run it, you might see a warning such as this, which defines the notebook is not authorized by Google. Go ahead and click run anyway. And once you do that, your first cell will be executed. And this block downloads two different modules. This block helps you download the workshop survey data and loads it into Pandas data frame. And at the same time, a data frame is basically a spreadsheet inside Python. So for rows, you have participant responses, such as the data of this. And at the same time, the columns are roles, departments, AI comfort level, their interest, their concerns, and their feedback. Okay, so the output is a reusable dataset object. So why does this actually matter? So instead of uploading a file directly, we are asking the question once, and we define where the data is actually coming from and how it enters the analysis. So go ahead and run the second cell, where we are loading the data into a data frame called data. So once you run this, it will take a couple seconds. So we are not interpreting the results yet. We are just making sure everyone is running from the same data set. So once you execute this, the data set is now available in the notebook. So once everyone is done with dataset, loading the dataset into the notebook, next we are going to check the quality of the data. Now we'll do a basic data inspection. The role of data inspection in any notebook or any workflow is that to control the quality of the notebook or the workflow. Because we are inspecting the structure, it gives us the confidence that the data is reliable, the data is readable, and the data is in a way that what is the workflow is actually expecting from the data set. So one might say that, why should I check the quality? Why is it actually required? Because we cannot directly jump into answers and try to answer your questions, because you first need to understand what is that we are analyzing. And the biggest difference between a reproducible workflow and a one-time AI answer is the data quality that we can do. So as you run these cells, don't need to memorize the number of rows, the number of columns. Uh, just try to understand this question. Do you understand what kind of data the workflow is actually using? Once you understand that, that is the main purpose of inspecting the data set. So we'll go ahead and run the couple cells. The first one defines the number of rows, the number of columns. It has 1,000 rows, which has 9 columns as well. And we are going to look at the different data types. In regular data sets, it can be numeric, it can be categorical, it can be text, it can be anything. So we understand that there are different types of data sets and how do you process that specific column as well. So we are trying to understand what are the different columns we have. Now let's go ahead and look at how does one survey response actually looks like. Once you run this, this is how a basic survey response looks like. So in that survey, they are defining what is their role, what is their department, what is their comfortness, what is their interest and their interest detail, what is their concern and concern detail, and some free text feedback as well. This is how the dataset is currently looking like. And as we have seen, this is how the dataset is. Now let's go ahead and look at, are there any missing values or any missing rows in the data? So again, once we inspect your data set, we should also make sure your data set is ready for making analysis and decisions at the same time. Because the input is the data set, right? And why we are actually checking whether it has missing values or duplicates is, for example, if your data set has duplicated responses or missing values, the notebook actually accommodates it. At the same time, if you build an analysis, if you build a model on top of data which has missing values or duplicate values, it will accommodate that. So even though if you have a clean data set, that can help you in making better predictions, making better analysis. So when the result is clean, you can prove the value saying that we have already checked whether the data set is in the right place or not. So go ahead and run these specific cells for missing values. So do not look at are we having all the right numbers or there are no missing values. The important idea is that this is a workflow which has a checkpoint before you go into analysis and analyzing and responding different questions. So as we check it, it doesn't have any null values and it doesn't have any duplicated responses as well. Now, before going into the analysis, let's think through a couple of questions. So there are various kinds of roles. So when you run the specific cell in analysis, you can see what are the different roles that are accommodated in the dataset and how many people for each of that role as well. So why are we actually doing this analysis? So this is to answer our operational questions, understanding what are the roles involved in the survey, what are the different departments, what is their comfortness. So here, the output is a first picture of who responded for the survey and how ready, how AI ready are the group as it appears. So if I, as an AI specialist, before going into a data set, I don't actually go by, one size fits all training or solutions. I first understand what support should we provide. In order to do that, we need to understand who is in the room. If it is a faculty heavy survey, which may lead to different support, whereas is it a student heavy survey or IT heavy survey and etc. So while you're doing this analysis, ask this: what kind of audience does this data set represent? Is it from higher ed, research, and what is the platform are you actually looking at? So that is the key thing that you have to keep in mind. So we are looking at different roles available, the different departments available in the data set, and what is the comfortness levels as well. So the next question, which is coming to the first research question, who has participated in the survey, and how AI comfortable are these different groups. So before going to answer, uh, try to guess what do you expect after running it? Which role do you think will be, or which department do you think will be more comfortable with AI, or which might be most constrained with AI? Do you think faculty or students or staff or research staff, will be more comfortable with AI? Who do you think, is a specific category will be uh, more approachable to AI, or someone might not? Try to guess that. So as we are not using AI, we are going to cross tab between roles and comfortness. So as we have seen the different roles in the notebook itself now, let's try to cross tab the roles and the comfortness. So when you run this specific cell, you'll see what are the different roles and what is the range of AI comfortness for that specific role as well. So this defines, we are moving from counts to support decisions here. So you're not just looking at a specific label or a specific row, you are looking at all labels in a single table. So this is a repeatable format. So even if you run this specific cell, you'll get the same output. For example, let's take the same question to an AI assistant. I'll upload the data set and I'll give the same research question that I'm asking here, and I'll try to get the response as well. When I do that, um, AI assistant or the chat interface will definitely give me an answer, and it will be a better one. But at the same time, if I run it after a day, after a week, the response might be different. It might not be the same response that you get if I run the same question with the same data set, right? So that is a key learning factor here. Again, let's try to normalize the same table that we are doing, because sometimes if the data set is dominated with students or has more participants as students or faculty, it might be dominant towards that. So when you normalize it, you can see the percentage of that specific role in that specific category. You can also create chats using simple notebooks. We are not going to discuss on how to create chats or how to create tables. So this is a way of answering that question. So looking at this, we can say most of the participants were comfortable, and there are few participants who are neutral as well. So as we are moving from basic data to decisions now what we are going to do is we are going to look at the secondary question as well, which is, what do you think there will be various AI use cases, and for each use case, what will be the concern that you look at? Let's take a second here and there, and let's make sure everybody is in the same notebook and in the same step. So for the first research question, what are the different roles and what is the AI comfortness? As we can see in the data set, with the cross tapping that we have done so far, with specific roles, someone are more comfortable. At the same time, each of these roles does have, uncomfortable and very uncomfortable, participants as well. Now that answers our first research question. Now the second research question is understanding different use cases and concerns attached to it. We'll follow the same approach as we have done using value counts. Let's look at what are the main interests that we have been looking so far. Right. So these are the different interests that has the participants has attached in the survey, saying that these are the different interests. Now, as we looked at the interest, let's look at the different concern categories as well. So once we look at the different concern categories, there are various, such as data privacy, academic misconduct, hallucinations, and etc. Now let's try to compare the participant role with that interest as well. So using crosstab, we are looking at how each role is interested in different categories. Now let's match the interest with the concern category so that we understand if a person with a specific interest, what are the different concern categories do they have, and what is the majority as it. So this answers our second question saying, if you have a specific interest, if a participant has a specific interest, what is the concern they are trying to solve? And how, as a researcher, how, as MSCC, as an AI specialist, I can solve these specific concerns. So this is how we are going to, we basically use a notebook to answer various survey questions, and we get to the response. So in this notebook, this does, complete the first notebook. We'll take a couple seconds for everyone to come to this step. So we did not use AI here at home, okay? And that is the point that I wanted to mention. It showed us notebooks are already useful because I'm actually inspecting the data set. I'm inspecting the workflow and I'm repeating it again and again. If all the participants and, for example, all of you who are running the exact notebook, as we are getting the same results, that does make it repeatable and shareable. But here is a limitation with the regular notebooks without AI. This can count categories, it can give you cross tables, it can compare one label with another, which already exists in the data set. You're not creating something new here. But it cannot easily reason over free text. For example, they do give their own reasoning for each of their response, but it cannot do it reasoning on top of it. At the same time, it cannot scale open-ended text. So that leads us to the next question saying, what happens if we want to apply the same reasoning that we have done so far using multiple categories, comparing different categories and what is their different participants' choices? How do we actually do it? And that is where an API comes into picture. So I'm heading back to slides. So with notebooks and the API, here we are adding AI into the workflow. So in the API notebook, what we are going to do is, as we chat with an AI assistant using a prompt, using a model, we'll use the notebook to send prompts to an external model. Here, API will act as a bridge between your notebook and the model available externally. So how it is different from a basic AI assistant approach while you use chat interfaces. So in chat interfaces, it is a one-off conversation where you give a prompt, you get a response. Whereas in notebooks, you apply the same prompt logic and it can be repeatedly across many different rows. So this is very useful when you categorize concerns, when you summarize themes, when you generate recommendations, define categories, and etc. But in the next approach, when we use Hugging Face Notebook, we'll select a model and we'll use it inside the notebook environment. So I want everyone to go back to the repo and I want you to open Notebook with API. So yes, so as we are going to use an API here, if you don't have an API, please follow through the presentation and try to understand how it can be replicable. And let's try to look at what are the different results that API notebook can provide us. In the same way, this is the API notebook named with notebook with API.ipynd. So I want everyone to be in this specific notebook. And as I said again, let's use the binder link so that it can direct us to the Google Colab. So again, we are going to follow the same process as we have done before. So let's take a couple seconds here so that everyone can be in the API notebook. And after that, we can follow through with everyone. Just take a couple of seconds. Mm, yes. So, so far we have seen how to analyze data without AI with basic Python commands. Now we are going to look at how API can be used. So as I said, I'll run the API live. You can follow through if you don't have the API key ready. Yes. So as we already see in the previous notebook, we are going to set up with basic modules, but we are adding two different modules here. One is JSON, one is TQDM. JSON is for structured AI output, and TQDM is to track progress while you are working on multiple rows. In the same process, we will load the modules. So you'll see the same warning saying it is not authorized by Google. Press run anyway. And after that, you can load the dataset. And in the same way as we have done with a notebook without AI, you have to make sure you check your dataset quickly, and at the same time, you have a inspection on your dataset as well. So once you do that, have basic checks such as what is the shape of the data, what are the different data types available, and what are the columns available, and a basic look at the data set, showing what are the roles, departments, and etc. So far, we have seen how each role and different departments are in the comfortness with AI. At the same time, we have compared their interest with their categories. But we haven't analyzed how does free text comes into picture. So that is where we are going to use an API and Hugging Face model. Before we connect a notebook to an AI model externally, we use an API key. So the best way is to keep it a secret because it is not suggested to share an API key to one another. So we keep it as a secret. In Google Colab, you can uh, store your API keys in your secrets, which is in the left tab, as you can see. It is the fifth icon from the top. So you can store your API keys there and you can run directly. I have my API key ready. So this is the same data set as before. Now, if you don't have the API key today, just observe this part. The pattern is what actually matters. So we're going to take a key and we're going to create a client and we'll call the model from here. We'll say that I want to use model X to use this task. Okay. So before using AI, on data, we actually don't want to use AI here on data. We want to create data and then want AI to interpret in human language to help us understand what is happening for the whole data set. So first we have to load the API key, then the OpenAI client. And once you do that, you have to create the client as well. So we'll be answering the same question, but in a different way. So here, the pandas that we loaded so far, Python is actually doing the content. AI is helping us interpret the results. So let's go ahead and run the first research question, which shows us what are the different role counts, department counts, and etc. Once everybody is here, just let us know if you have any issues. So again, recapping what we have done so far, we have done analysis without AI. Now we are going to use an API key. Now I created the same tables that we have created in the previous notebook with role and comfortness and their normalization as well. Now I'm going to use these tables. I'll pass these summary tables to a prompt and ask the model to write a basic interpretation. So before going ahead and writing the prompt here, so I've already written a prompt. So we usually say that this is the input that we are going to provide and what is the different structured output that you would like to have. And you have to define your model and the input that you are providing, which is the prompt. The syntax of the prompt can be different from one, you know, one API service to another. It might be OpenAI's API or Google's API or Anthropic's API, the structure might be different, but the process usually is same. Here again, AI is not doing the analysis. We don't want AI to create numbers or to invent numbers. We want AI to give us an interpretation or an explanation from structured results. We already created the tables that AI would like to have. We already created that. Now we are going from data to tables using a prompt and getting us an interpretation. So once you run this, if you don't have an API key, you might get an error. If you have an API key, you'll get a response in three different formats. We have requested a concise response for the research question, three different patterns, and an explanation statement as well. As you see, it is very similar to what AI actually provides directly when you use a chat interface. What is the difference? Here, we have a structured response. You are not getting, 3 to 5 paragraphs describing what does the dataset have and etc. and etc. Here, you have defined what are the three things that you need and the structure of it, and you got in the same way. In the same format, you can run other research questions, and I'm going to just execute fail it. So this is going to give me the response for research question 2 as well. So once we do this, we are going to get again, while defining a prompt, you are making sure you are doing the analysis, whereas AI is helping you interpret the analysis. So again, I got a response using AI. Now here is where things get interesting. Now, so far we have done analysis and used AI for interpretation. Now let's go to a more AI task. So you have so far seen different roles, different departments, their interests, their concerns, and etc. Now, I want AI to recommend what kind of support does each participant require. This is, this is kind of harder when you count there because each of the participant does include their role. I'm sorry, the participant, what is their role, what is the department, what is their interest, what is their concern, and their free text feedback. So in order to give them a specific support pathway, you have to consider all these, which is not possible using basic Python without using AI. So as we are using an API key here, first, we are going to define what are the different support pathways we can provide them. Here in the notebook, as you can see, we have already predefined a couple pathways defining based on the free text feedbacks here. So why are we defining these support categories? So this here, I want AI to analyze the output later, but every row needs to use the same set of possible labels, right? So that is why we are going to define a JSON schema saying what is the output that I need and what is the type of the output and the structure. This is the JSON schema that we define. Instead of getting loose paragraphs, I want it to give me what is the support pathway that AI is recommending for a participant, why it is recommending that, at the same time, a brief explanation as well. So once we define the JSON schema, we are going ahead and writing a prompt function. So this is similar to what we do in a chat interface. Here, we are not writing a different prompt for a different response, giving a row or giving AI a different perspective. We are writing one prompt pattern and we are applying repeatedly for each and every participant. That is how AI becomes scalable inside your notebook. You're not applying AI for one participant at a time. So we have defined the prompt function here, and then we are calling the API using the model and the input prompt as we have defined, and using what kind of output you would like. So go ahead and execute this specific rows for research question 3. So these are the support pathways, what is the structure of the output you would like, and the prompt function. Now, before going ahead and calling the API, we have to make sure we have an error handling section, because once an API call fails, if you have 1,000 rows, if you don't have an error handling section, your API call will stop immediately, and it does not go through for another rows as well. So you have to make sure in real workflows you are able to handle small failures and issues in a graceful manner. So in order to do that, you should have an error handling section as we have defined here. So let's go ahead and execute that. So first, I would like to test one row at a time. I see Dr. Fraseha raised your hand.
Um,
Yes.
Hi, do you expect us to do this because you didn't provide the API key and it is not moving beyond that section for me?
Oh, so if you don't have an API key right now, you can just observe for now, because uh, API key does need some credits that we have to provide. So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
yeah. So, yes. Yeah. So once we define the error handling function, what we are going to do is we are going to run for one row at once, and we'll see whether the structure that we provided, the prompt that we provided, is it in the right format, or is the way we have to edit. Just letting you know, I have actually created an error upfront so that we can look at how does error handling look like. So I do know the error, but I'm just letting you upfront. So when I run this, it says the recommended pathway is none. Um, as you can see on the screen, the recommended pathway is none, and the reason is none. And it gave me an error code saying invalid schema for response format. So here the difference is that I've actually changed the name for the variable. So there are two different ways to solve this. So if you know the error, you can directly solve it, or you can also use AI using toggle Gemini here, saying that what is the issue that is actually you're actually facing here, and try to solve it. That is one way. And if you know the exact error that is actually pointing out, you can directly do it. Let's go ahead and ask Gemini uh, what is the error here. So I've actually renamed the variable to a different one of what the API key is actually expecting. So that is the error that I'm actually seeing, which says invalid schema. So as Gemini is processing, it is saying that then variable is different. As you can see here, it has to be explanation phrase, but I made it explanation phrase. So if I say accept and run, it's going to change that, and it's going to run the same function again. So let's go ahead and let's run the same row again. So once I do this, I'll be able to see a recommended support pathway and a brief reason as well. So as you can see here, once we have changed that, we got an output. Now, what does this imply? So it is in the same way as you're using a chat interface. You gave a data set, you're asking for a recommended support pathway, and for that specific participant, the support pathway is grant writing support. In the same way, we can do it for the whole data set as well. So for the time being right now, you can run the same execution after the webinar as well. We are going to go ahead and look at how we can use a Hugging Face model as well, as we only have 10 minutes on top of the hour. So yes, so this is how we basically use an API key, providing the structure, the prompt function. It is very similar to what we use a chat interface. But what is the difference here? So in chat interface, you provide one prompt and you get one response. Whereas in a notebook with an API key, you basically provide one prompt pattern and you repeat it for many rows, many structured outputs, and etc. And that is the main reason behind using an API in a notebook. So we are not just using an API to get a recommended support pathway or using AI to get a response. we are using AI in a reproducible workflow. You can reproduce it with a different data set, with a different data inspection. Once you clean it, you can use the say different API with different workflows as well. So that makes it a reproducible workflow. Uh, yes. So now let's go back to the repo. So once we go to the repo, you'll see another notebook named as notebook with HF model. So once you open it, I want you to again follow the same process. Use the binder link so that it takes you back to Google Colab. So in this, we are not trying to solve research question 1 and 2. We'll use an open source model so that it answers the same question saying which support pathway is recommended for a specific participant here. Okay, so the same process is being applied here, the same libraries. Sorry. So here, click Runaway when you have an warning saying that it is being redirected from GitHub and not from Google Colab. So yeah, so before explaining how we do this, I just wanted to give a clear explanation. So uh, the difference between Hugging Face, open source model, people says Olama model, and etc. So let's try to understand what are the different types first, and after that, let's head into this. So Hugging Face is like GitHub for models. So you have various models, you select a model and you use it. So what is the difference between using a Hugging Face model or API key? You are using AI here, right? So a Hugging Face model is where you bring the model and use it inside your environment. Whereas an API key, you are using an external model using a medium. So instead of using a chat interface, you are saying that I want to use the model in the notebook. That is where an API key comes into picture. Whereas Hugging Face, you have various models and you say that I want to use this specific model. Whereas Olama is, it's like a media player for different AI models. So you can run that media in your local system. It might be your Windows laptop, it might be your Mac OS, and anything. Whereas an open source model is a model where users can, change it, use it, or modify it as you see it. Okay, that is the minor difference that I just wanted to explain. So in the same way as we have done before, we are going to load different libraries. Here is a small important piece, as you can see on screen, which is transformers. So we use transformers and the pipeline function to, it is a way of loading pre-trained models, which is on Hugging Face and used for a task. So while you load this model in the notebook, it might take a couple seconds because it has to bring the model into your notebook. So that is why it might take a couple seconds here and there. So we are going to inspect the data. We have the data set ready, and we are defining the support pathways. So here is an important task again, choosing a model. So with Hugging Face, you do not say that I want to use a specific AI or I want to use AI here. You basically say that you choose a model for that specific task that is in hand here. Here, we have different categories and different participants, and we are trying to categorize them and classify them. So our task is classification here. So we want to match participant feedback to a support pathway. So we are using a zero-shot classification model by Meta or Facebook as we create here. So again, I'm sorry, I actually lost my train of thought. So zero shot actually means that we give a model a piece of text and labels, and we are trying to choose a fitting label for that specific participant. So you're not training the model yet. That is going to be a next step. So first we'll define the support pathways. Again, why do we define support pathways is that we don't want AI to think indefinite way and give us various labels. We want to keep it constrained within a limited categories. So that is why we are giving it support pathways. First, we have to load the classifier. So what does a classifier mean is Here, this is a step where Notebook brings the model to here. So as I said, this does take a tad bit of time. It is normal because unlike an API model, you are using the model in the notebook here. You're not using a model which is outside your environment. So you'll also see a Hugging Face warning as this, which says you might need a Hugging Face token. This is a public model, so you might not need a token, but when you use private models, you might need Hugging Face tokens as well. So once we do that, we are going to look at run a small sample on top of this. So as I said, this specific model that we are using, which is zero shot classification model, um, it matches labels with that specific participant and etc. So now let's run for a specific person. So I'm going to run for participant 12. You can change it to among 1,000 participants. You can change it for any different participant as well. Now let's look at what does that provide us. It's saying teaching and course design support. For participant 12, this is the support pathway that a Hugging Face model is giving us. In the same way, as we are doing it for 1,000 participants, not just one, we need to write a classification function because you can give one row in and you can get one model prediction out. So the difference is that in API model, uh, it is the same workflow that we use. But here we are using an Hugging Face model. There we used an API function. So in the same way, we need a function for that. So this gives us two different ways. I'm saying that I want a recommended support pathway on and the confidence score as well. Now let's run for a small sample with four different rows. So while it actually executes it, let's discuss something else. So here I'm asking for the score, right? So the output includes the pathway for that specific participant and the model's score for that specific pathway. So I don't want to focus on the score or how high is the score. So it gives us a rough sense on how model thinks that pathway is for that specific participant. So the key idea is that the model can label free text responses in a repeatable way. Now I'm asking for responses. It can do it for 1,001 as well. So as we have done with, this is for the HF model using a Hugging Face model. We can do the same for 1,000 responses as well, but it does take a lot of time. Now let's go back and compare what we have seen so far and how comparing them can is beneficial. So as we have seen, an API gives us more flexible reasoning and explanation for you. Whereas Hugging Face gives you control over your model. You can say that what is the task in hand? Based on that, you choose a model. You say what are the weights for that specific model. So the trade-off is you need to set up more, you need to select the model, and you have the responsibility of selecting the right model as well. So that is the why of using a Hugging Face model is control and reproducibility. Now let's compare the four approaches that we have discussed so far. So a chat UI or an AI assistant, it stores your conversation. It is easy to do. It is really fast to get quick responses. But at the same time, it is weak for repeatability and scale. Whereas if you have a notebook without AI, you are storing the code. It is transparent. It is repeatable. And but it is kind of limited for open-ended questions. When you use an API or a local model, you have both code and everything in your notebook itself. Whereas an API gives you more AI reasoning across free text, whereas with a local model, you get more control, but you have the technical responsibility as well. So here, I don't want you to think about which approach is best, but think of this question: which one actually fits the task that you have, or any research use case that you have? Think about it. And yeah, that should be it for the demo. And I'm going to hand over to Amanda for next.
Great. Thank you, Pavan. That was really, really technical and a really awesome deep dive. So the takeaway here is that if you remember only one thing from today's webinar, other than going on to the GitHub repo, is this. The goal here is not to replace ChatGPT or Claude with notebooks. We can still use ChatGPT, we can still use Claude, we can still use Gemini, we can still use any of the tools that you build. They're all wonderful tools. The goal really is to transform one-time AI conversations into reusable, reproducible workflows. So when somebody, right? So when somebody like your provost or your student or another faculty member comes back 6 months from now and says, hey, can you rerun that analysis on our news survey data? You don't want to have to go back and reconstruct an old chat history. You want to be able to pull something up and make those runs. You want a documented workflow that you can execute again over and over and over again. So that's the advantage of using notebooks. It isn't that the notebooks are smarter, it is that notebooks remember. So, with that, we're going to open the floor for questions. I think we'll take a couple of minutes just to answer questions, and then we're at time. So, if anybody has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, or just raise your hands. We're happy to take questions. All right, I'm going to just move on since we are at time. Um, so this, Pavan, do you want to move on to the next slide? So before you leave for today, this webinar really, we started out with the overarching one-on-one webinar, and then we moved on to tools, AI tools, and this is our third webinar of our MSCC AI Readiness webinar series. And it really is just the beginning of more hands-on webinars. That's the feedback that we've been getting from talking to the community. So I wanted to just ensure that the people remaining on this call know that we have some really exciting things coming up over the next few months. So in September, we are going to have a hands-on introduction to agentic AI. So learn how to connect LLMs, tools, and memory into intelligent workflows. On October 18, we will be talking more at an higher level, institutional level on data ethics and policy essentials. So that's less hands-on, but more about how to successfully adopt AI at your institution. Our goal at MSCC is not to simply teach people how to use AI tools, but to work together with you to help institutions develop practical, sustainable, and responsible approaches to using AI in research, education, and administration. So with that, thank you all for joining us today. We will be sending out the slide deck and the recording at the end. And then we'll also send out a quick survey. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining today and for spending almost over an hour with us. And if you have any questions, we do have those emails down there. And somebody mentioned, are we able to register for the webinar, September webinar? Yes, everybody on this call today, anybody that's registered for this call, you will receive an update when we have opened that registration. So thank you again. Thank you, Anna, for your questions. And we will see you all at our next webinar series. Thank you, everybody.